Hello and welcome to the Warehouse of the Future, a series of exclusive podcasts brought to you by Renovotec, a leading name in end-to-end AIDC and enterprise mobility technology solutions. On today's episode, we'll be discussing why subscribing to a managed service within your organisation is vital to maintaining operational efficiency and to the security of your operations. I'm Dave Harris, and joining me to discuss this important topic is Jamie Mottershead. He's the Technical Director at Renovotec, and also his colleagues Andy McKenna, Technical Support Manager, and Steph Wood, Sales Manager here at Renovotec. Steph, Jamie, Andy, thank you for joining me here today at Renovotec's Innovation Centre to talk all things technology for the warehouse. So, Jamie, if I could start with you. So much is changing in the world of warehousing and logistics. What are the key challenges that warehouse directors and managers are facing right now, would you say?
I think there's multiple challenges in the space, and from a technology perspective, it's about making sure that the colleague on the shop floor has the right equipment that they need to fulfil that particular process, and what that's led to is a wide array of different device types that operators are using, and there is always the requirement to go to more of a multimodal use. So what we're seeing out there in the industry is lots of different devices on the shop floor, which means that managers are then having to maintain security updates, security patches. They're having to support multiple different device types and making sure that they're at the forefront of any updates from a security perspective. So I think the short answer to your question is it's getting more and more difficult, and a lot of businesses are coming to people like ourselves to support them with that managed service offering.
Yeah, because presumably just keeping up with what's going on in the world of warehousing is a challenge in and of itself. So you guys can be very useful in that respect, is in that you are abreast of all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the parts of the Guardian service we'll go into in a little bit more detail in a second is to make sure that all of our customers are updated with the latest and greatest from the manufacturer, to make sure that they have or are aware of what the latest updates that they can take advantage of. So usually they come out on a monthly basis. There'll be a new release of a firmware, and then they'll decide whether that's an update that they want to take or they need to take either from a security perspective but also from a use case perspective.
So Steph, if I could turn to you now. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
What areas of the warehouse would you say is enterprise mobility typically deployed in?
I think we see enterprise mobility in every area of the warehouse, all the way from goods in to goods out, picking, packing, shipping, logistics. It has a place in every area. We see everything in use from the traditional handheld warehouse guns. Then we also start to see the more innovative technology coming in, such as machine vision, where you get a visual representation of everything that's being packed and shipped out to the customer. We also have a lot of voice picking in heavy pick areas with fast picking. Robotics can assist with that as well. Do a lot of the heavy lifting so that your pickers can stay in the aisles and achieve maximum efficiency. Mobile print as well is something that we see a lot of, and also RFID technology can really assist with monitoring the assets in the warehouse, goods coming in, goods coming out, and knowing exactly where all the stock and inventory is.
Yeah. As talking as a layman, I wonder, does this sort of technology, does it make life more interesting for the people that work in the warehouse, do you think, or less, or is there a balance there?
Yeah, I think it does make it more interesting. I suppose it's good that the handheld terminals and the guns have retained their place, because obviously a lot of people who've worked in warehousing for a long time are very comfortable with that. So what we have now is handhelds that can be used for a multitude of different uses. So, for example, we can have handhelds where you can fix a trigger handle to, so they become the warehouse gun. They can go into the vans. You can put an RFID reader on them. So a lot of the technology will be familiar, but then there's also some of the like I said, the machine vision and the robotics, which is really new and I'd imagine quite exciting for people who are working in that environment every day.
I think just to add on to that, I think we're in a world now where people are more technology savvy, if you like. They're used to using, smart devices from their mobile phone perspective. So bringing that into the logistics space where people have that understanding of use and, Android-based devices that become more familiar with them, I think that transition has become a lot easier. And obviously then adding on to that the support and the upkeep, if you like, of those type of devices from a firmware perspective, from a security perspective, but also, from an application perspective is really important. And, bringing all that together is part of that managed service that we're talking about.
Steph, are you finding this technology sometimes is treated as a bit of a box shifting exercise where a company just acquires something because they think they should or because somebody suggested it? And on the other hand, do the more discerning clients actually want more support with the technology, so that they make sure that they're well covered throughout the life cycle of a particular technology?
Yeah, I think it can be very easy to look at it as a box shifting exercise from a customer's perspective. But actually, at Renovotec, we see it as much more than that, and we have all the services in place to offer a full service if that's what the customers require. Obviously, we work across a huge variety of customers and verticals. Some of those customers will have no IT support, and they'll need our full support. And other times they'll have their own IT team who are very familiar with what they need to do, and they'll require minimal support from us. We would obviously always recommend that they do get in touch with us to look at the life cycle of the terminal. We can offer a fully managed service, including our Guardian service, which includes all of your firmware updates and device management. I think Andy will be going into that in a little more detail later on. We also have a repair centre, and Renovotec are actually the only reseller who are authorised to repair both Honeywell and DataLogic devices in the UK and Europe. So that's a real selling point for us, because if a customer chooses not to go ahead with an upgrade, if they do want to sweat their assets for a little bit longer, then we can help them with that repair. We can keep it in country and turn them around really quickly for them.
Andy, you got a mention there, so it's time to bring you in. Sorry to keep you waiting. Has anything changed more recently which you think perhaps has led to customers reevaluating their managed service provider?
I wouldn't say reevaluating the managed service provider. I'd say reevaluating their approach to finding the correct managed service for them. There's been a big push nowadays towards being more security focused. Things like the UK Cyber Essentials came along, which has obviously driven people towards looking at getting certification to be able to say, yes, we take security seriously. Now, it's all very good that companies are taking that approach, but we have to consider, do they have the resource and do they have the capabilities to actually deliver that as well? So that's where, effectively, as Steph mentioned, our Guardian managed services start coming into play, because we can provide the firmware updates. We will notify customers when they are available, and then we can actually apply those to customer estates as well at their request. What we found is it isn't the idea of security that is the thing that holds people back. It's the time and effort that goes into securing an estate that is the issue.
And I think just to add to that, I think Andy mentioned the cybersecurity, essentials. That's been a key driver in what in how we've put together the Guardian managed service. There are a lot of other key points to mention, but it's been a key driver. We're not saying at that point we're going to make you cybersecurity compliant, cybersecurity essentials compliant, but we are going to help you along that process in a lot of different ways, and we can tailor that to whatever the customer's need may be.
And does that mean it's actually quite difficult to, you can't just flick a switch and make everything compliant? It is a process.
It is a process, exactly that. So understanding the latest releases and firmware patches and that come to the customer and trying to stay within that recommended 14-day period of those releases becomes available. Traditionally, particularly in the warehouse space, then we often come across customers that may be looking to move over to Renovotec that have had the same firmware on device for multiple years, as an example. So it's a slight change of ethos, if you like, a slight change in thinking, as Andy mentioned, to bring them across into the new world of Android devices and making sure that we can support them in the best possible way.
So, Steph, that's interesting what Jamie was just saying. You can't just flick a switch and be compliant and all that sort of thing. Do customers have unrealistic expectations sometimes of how quickly they can go down that road?
I don't think they have unrealistic expectations. I think sometimes they perhaps don't realise the work that's involved in keeping the estate up to date, or perhaps it's just something that's obviously quite new to them. And they've realised that it's something that they need to start taking quite seriously now. So it's something that we can help with every step of the way. If a customer comes to us and say, this is our challenge, this is what we're going to struggle with, what can you do to help, then we will certainly make sure that we put them in touch with the correct people within the organisation. We look at their existing estate and we put together a proposal for how to manage their existing estate and any new devices that are going to come on board after that. But our Guardian Managed Service can ensure that all their existing devices plus anything new is absolutely covered to the level that they require.
I think probably just to add one point to that, we mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast that the amount of different device types that are out there in the marketplace or in the warehouse that are being used, whether that's a wearable device, whether that's a handheld device, whether that's a truck mount device. We mentioned about printers, making sure that they're all compliant, they're all on the latest possible firmware they can be, managing that process for multiple different goal builds for multiple different device types, and then considering all of the software that's running on those. That's where the assistance and the support we can give to the customer really comes to fruition, because that can then be quantifiable from a commercial perspective as well. There is a business case that we can build along that, so to support the customer as best we possibly can.
Jamie, tell me about service level agreements and their importance within the supply chain.
Yeah, service level agreements are probably fundamental to everything we do with our customers. We understand how business critical we become to a lot of our customers. Gone are the days of, as you mentioned before, box shifting, supplying a device and disappearing off into the sunset. We're there to support the customer, through the whole process and life cycle. And if customers then find issues with devices, for whatever reason, then they need to have the confidence and knowledge that there is a service level agreement to back that up, that we will get them to a place where they can be back to business as usual as quick as possible. So a service level agreement is absolutely critical for our customers and their operations.
Yeah, so if I can add that, what we see is if a device goes down in an operation centre, consider just warehousing. If you've got a picker who's had to walk to one end of the warehouse to pick an item, and then that effectively the device stops functioning, he's got a poor performing battery on the device, and he then has to walk all the way back to the head office area to collect a new battery or new device. That isn't a lot of time lost.
Jamie, what about managed service then? Should an organisation invest in a managed service?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the managed services solutions that we put together at Renovotec are extremely flexible. And I think that's the key part of this. Yes, we have our tiered offerings depending on the customer's needs and requirements, but then to add, additional functionality into that, maybe that's a hot swap service, spare in the air, making sure that, devices are able to get to the customer as quickly as possible are vitally important. The elements that we've been discussing around firmware and software are obviously critical to the operation and from a security perspective, but I think there are fundamental elements that allow us to be flexible to put together a solution that best suits the customer and their requirements.
And Steph, do you find customers kind of understand the managed service and what it means and the implications for it over time?
Yes, I think so. When we look at which level of managed service to put a customer on, it is something that we talk through with them. So what we tend to do is kind of work from the top and say, right, this is our full service. What do you need? What don't you need? Like Jamie said, we can be very flexible. So we can remove items for them. It can be something as simple as, us arranging collection for any faulty devices. Perhaps the customer doesn't need that. So we really work with them to tailor it every step of the way and make sure that the service they receive is exactly what they need. So I think, they are quite familiar with what our service offers. They have a customer portal where they can contact us. They can contact us by phone. They can contact us by email. And obviously they also have an account manager on the sales team as well, for if they want any non-support related queries or just want to run something through with us, and they can always speak to their account manager as well.
So Andy, what would you say is the Renovotec approach then overall?
For our managed services, I'd say we've got 3 pillars almost to it. So we start with security. then it's the management, and then it's the monitoring. So anytime we've been looking at the design of our Guardian services, they've been the fundamental building blocks for all of them. If you consider Guardian Essentials, for example, with that you'll get our standard gold build included in it. That gives you effectively the best starting point for your devices. We start with the latest operating system for your devices. We'll build your applications on top of that. We will lock the devices down with lockdown screens, and that gives you, I'd say, the core starting point for any operational design that you have for these devices. On top of that, we then include our firmware updates. So we're actually uncapping the number of firmware updates that we'll allow a customer to have through our services, and that's because we believe that the firmware updates are so fundamental in providing a secure environment. Anyone knows working in IT, you're effectively only as strong as your weakest point. So it's effectively, why would you let mobility be it when there's technology and companies like ourselves who can help you make sure that stays secure?
Yeah, so it's about the customer feeling reassured and confident that, you know, nothing's going to go wrong because they know you guys are handling all of that.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, you know, the elements that we can add to this are, you know, sort of reactive and proactive support. You know, we're still going to be there to the reactive point where the customer picks up the call or logs a ticket with us, and we'll look into that with our usual service level agreements. But in addition to that, some of the elements we can add on to our Renovotec Guardian managed service are elements where we are proactively supporting customers. So we are then receiving data from devices that are telling us when issues are likely to occur, and we can go in and, you know, and then resolve them and come back to the customer. And by the way, you had an issue last night. We did this to resolve it. Are we happy? You know, and we can take, you know, action moving forward to make sure that doesn't happen again. You know, in addition to that, you know, having, you know, in some instances the analytics suite available to the customer to be able to take real time data from devices. You know, I know Andy mentioned before about the, you know, from a battery perspective, but taking data from a battery so that we stop that downtime, that unnecessary downtime that can sometimes occur, you know, is really important for us. And so, you know, saving sort of 30 seconds per operator may not sound a lot, but when you times that by hundreds of people, that's where we get a huge amount of savings, and we can help support that. So it becomes a partnership with the customer. You know, I think there's added extras in terms of, you know, buffer stock of devices that we can hold and maintain, and be able to show where those devices are at any one point in time.
So Steph, in the sort of big scheme of things, if a customer comes to you and they've got a wonderful system that they've installed and they're very happy with it, but they suddenly need to just add a few devices, is that pretty easy to do?
Yeah, it becomes very easy. Once the managed service is in place, we already have everything set up. So we've got all the contracts set up, we've got the gold build set up, we've got their MDM licenses ready. So it's really just a matter of us ordering more hardware, and then we'll do all the legwork for them. We'll get obviously additional licenses wherever it's needed. The support team know exactly what's required on each of those devices. We get it installed and shipped out to them. So as soon as they receive that device, it's ready to use out of the box.
So Jamie, for people who've been listening and watching today, how can they find out more about this stuff?
I think in the first instance, visiting us at renovotec.com is the simplest way, or contacting your existing account manager if you're an existing Renovotec customer. We have a fantastic facility that we're in today at our Renovotec Innovation Centre here. We'd love to host you here to come and have a look at device types, and we can give you some real-world examples of our Guardian services.
And that's all we have time for today. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our guests, Jamie Mottershead, Steph Wood and Andy McKenna, for joining us for this fascinating episode of the Warehouse of the Future. If you want to learn more about managed services and technology solutions for the warehouse, as Jamie said, please visit renovotec.com. And whilst there, you can also book a visit to our brand new state-of-the-art Renovotec Innovation Centre located at our UK HQ in Newton-le-Willows, Merseyside, where we are sitting right now. And I can tell you it's a very impressive place. My name is Dave Harris, and you've been listening to the Warehouse of the Future. See you for the next episode.